We're live. Yes, God. Hey, everybody. This is Megan, and this is the Yes, Godcast. And this is the place where we come to stop outsourcing our power and start embodying the divine identity that creates everything from within. Yes, God. So today we are starting episode 4, and we are going to be, actually, that's not true. Blah, 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 blah. I'm going to delete this out later. Today we are starting episode 5, which is shut the fuck up was the pause. Now this is the power. So what we're going to be talking about today is what we do after we have gained the self-awareness and the self-control to be able to hold our automatic response or reaction to triggers. Because when a trigger happens, right, we naturally get anxiety, we feel riled up, we want to say something, we want to allow the narrative in our mind to kind of spiral out of control. And so being able to be aware that that's happening and then being able to stop that from happening by what we talked about, which is our superpower of regulating ourselves, getting back into our parasympathetic nervous system, taking deep breaths, allowing ourselves to calm down, telling our thoughts if necessary, depending on how aggressive they're being. I need you to shut the fuck up right now. I need you to be quiet because right now is a pivotal time for me to be creating something new. I'm not interested in creating what I have already created because I see what results that has. I'm interested now in doing something new. So we're opening up this curiosity loop. And the curiosity loop says, what if my piece is not missing right now? What if I'm just misplacing it and putting the dependency or the contingency on this circumstance or on this thing going as planned or on what this person says to me or on what this person doesn't say to me, okay? So what if we could create peace in the middle of chaos, not after it ends, but actually become the eye in the middle of that storm that now becomes and always has been the God in the middle of that storm, right? Because the thing is that us and God are one. Okay, whether we recognize that, whether we acknowledge that, whether we realize that, that is the universal truth. So whatever our mind is telling us, whatever somatic body response that we're having to anything that happens to us, whether it's a trigger or not, that is actually what is creating and planting seeds for future circumstances to unfold. So it's very, very important, especially when we're in the middle of a storm, in the middle of a trigger, to be able to come back to that calm-centered place. Remember that we are creating powerfully in that place because we have this high charge of emotion, and really be cautious and mindful about what it is that we're creating and not allow our thoughts to lead our emotions down a path of negativity and down a path of worst case scenario, okay? So something that I always like to ask myself is, what if it's not that, right? If my mind is telling me something that is making me feel upset, anxious, or uneasy, I just simply say, what if it's not that? What if it's something different? You know, I don't have to come up with a whole narrative necessarily in that moment. However, the more discipline and the more practice, the more reps you get in of practicing this quietness, this stillness, this awareness, when you're triggered, you will then be able to switch over to actually become very imaginative, very creative in this space, okay? And so a lot of times as human beings, right, we think that peace comes from closure. We think that peace comes from people understanding us. We think that peace comes from finally having this much money or finally having this much time or finally having this much clarity. And the peace that we are seeking is not dependent on external conditions, all right? Because true peace is being able to stay grounded and regulated regardless of what's happening. If we never have the conversation for closure, if no one ever understands us, if the finances never look the way we think they should look, right? True peace is being able to maintain that status quo regardless of the circumstances, all right? So today we're going to be talking about the plot twist principle, all right? And that is what we are approaching after we go ahead and shut the fuck up, right? Fall back, give ourselves the opportunity to breathe. Give ourselves the opportunity to come out of that mind, right, and come back into that heart. Give ourselves the opportunity to actively restructure that inner authority, okay, and say, you know what, the story, the script, the narrative that is running in my mind right now, I'm going to get curious about if this is really true. And what we'll find that happens is when we get curious is we'll realize it's absolutely not true. There are so many infinite possibilities of ways this situation could turn out. There's so many infinite possibility of ways of what this situation means. And perhaps I don't have all the information, all the data to actually put the puzzle together right now. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do once we are in that place of quiet and stillness in the middle of the storm is we want to anchor into the identity, right, that we have chosen for ourselves as a divine extension of God. And that means something different for everyone. We're actually going to be going over that practice tomorrow in the Yes God Spiritual Gym, the Success Sanctuary. We're going to be spending some time to actually identify, okay, what does my divine self look, feel, touch, taste, sound, what is all of the attributes of my divinity, okay? What as far as my mind can reason and imagine right now in this moment. And by the way, God, I'm open to you giving me revelations, but I am going to head in the direction of creating in my mind what I think from my level of consciousness right now, what my divine highest version looks like, okay? And so once we have anchored that in, when we're in the middle of that storm and we're in that calm, we can actually go and anchor into that version of ourselves, that identity, okay? And we can ask the question, what would they be thinking? What would they be feeling? How would they be responding? What would their reaction be to this, okay? And if you're coming from a divine place, I can tell you, I can give you the cheat sheet, it's unmoved, right? It's not a reaction. It's not a devastation. It's not a hysteric, right? It is calm, cool, collected, trusting, knowing that everything is going to be okay, everything is going to be fine, and everything is still going to work out perfectly. All right? So that is the first step of the plot twist principle is go ahead and pause. Okay, the identity that I've already rehearsed, that I already know is my highest version, that I have already defined. Okay, what would they be responding like? All right, how do I allow myself to let go of this survival mode that my mind is trying to put me in? And how do I merge and come together with the self-authority of my divine self that knows that everything is fine, that knows that everything is going to be okay? All right. Yes, God. And you guys, let me know. Comment below this video or comment below the podcast. Let me know, has there been a time when you were able to do this? Or I know for me, there's been times when I was in the middle of a trigger and chaos and I wasn't even aware of it, but I was able to, I felt this sense of calm just come over me. It wasn't even something that I intentionally tried to do. It was something that just happened. And I think that was one of the times in my life where it really anchored in and I understood like, wow, there really is a God. There really is a force that allows me to be at peace within myself. All right. So the next thing that we can do once we identify, okay, this is the version that I'm going to respond to this trigger from, right? We can now go into, again, our affirmations, all right? Some great ones to use are, why is my nervous system safest when I say less? Okay, again, tying into the shut the fuck up principle. Why is it so easy to feel grounded even when it doesn't seem like this circumstance is resolved? Why do I choose peace over proof? All right, so those are 3 affirmations that can be very powerful in allowing your consciousness to open up to different possibilities, to different solutions.
Next time.
All right, and so again, this is the work that we do inside the spiritual gym. This is where we come to really get into that inner work, right? Because, and I talked to a client about this yesterday, is that we sometimes get confused and believe that the circumstances are making us feel a certain way. Well, if this were different, then I would feel like this. Or if I were with this person, then I would feel like this. Or if I had this much money, then or if I look like this, then I. And the thing about understanding reality selection, which we're all doing, okay, whether we're ignorant to it or not, is that it starts from feeling good first. It starts from, wow, I am perfect, I am whole, I am complete, I am enough already, regardless of if this particular thing goes this way, regardless of if I have a conversation or not with this person, regardless of if there is closure provided, regardless of whatever, right? So reality selection is starting with feeling good, not as the goal, but feeling good as the prerequisite. Okay? And this is why it's so important to be disciplined and consistent with taking deep breaths, with practicing silence, with practicing not reacting, with practicing telling our mind that it needs to be quiet and conform to just taking inhales and exhales, right? This is why we do this type of work, so that we are rehearsing, okay? We're rehearsing the mindfulness, we're rehearsing the peace. Because just like any muscle that you exercise, it's going to grow the more that you do it. So the more that you are able to take control back away from your mind trying to pull you down a rabbit hole, the easier it will become in a unexpected circumstance, right? So we are getting intentional about, hey, even though there's quote unquote no trigger that's happening right now, I'm still going to take time to sit with myself, to be still, to take deep breaths, and to be mindful of how my thoughts are trying to distract me away from my inhale and exhale. And because I'm doing that intentionally and consistently and in a disciplined way every day, I am strengthening that muscle. Just like if you go to the gym, right, and you are strengthening your arm muscles, right? So when it comes time for you to pick up something that's 70 pounds, right, you're able to do it. Why? Because you have strengthened that muscle. It's the same with spirituality. It's the same with reality selection. It's the same with grounding into being regulated and being at peace. The more you practice that, okay, when you're not in a situation that calls for it, now you are better equipped and you are that much more prepared when a situation or a trigger that does call for it, okay? And so the beautiful thing about this is that it strengthens over time, all right? As time goes by, as you continue to practice this, as you continue to be disciplined with this, you will find that circumstances and situations, not only will the triggers become less and less, but the triggers will start to change, right? Because it'll get to a point where what used to trigger you doesn't even trigger you anymore. Why? Because you have successfully shifted to a version of yourself where that nothing can disturb your peace. Okay? And so being clear about what that identity, what that version of you is super important. Yes, God. So, again, in the spiritual gym, what we do, we practice identity reps, okay? Breathing before the reaction, identity before impulse, okay? This is how peace becomes who you are, not just what you're looking for. We're not looking for peace, we're becoming peace. Okay, we're doing nervous system conditioning, we're doing spiritual endurance, and we're doing muscle memory for our divine self. Okay, so that when circumstances do call for us to respond in a certain way, we're already there. You know, it's going to become like second nature to us. All right, so if you're tired of emotional ping pongs with people, outcomes, triggers, you can absolutely come. We would love to have you in the Success Sanctuary, the Yes God Body Spiritual Gym. Until the end of this month, on May 28th, it is $333 for lifetime access, which is a freaking deal. And then after that, it will be changing to a recurring monthly gym membership of $111 a month, which, by the way, is still a great deal. It's still a lot cheaper than your therapy and your psychiatrist, and and not knocking those things, right? But there is something to be said for practical application that's being practiced with you versus just talking about things and your trauma and all these things. And because there's a fine line between talk therapy and recreation therapy, okay? So anyways, my name is Megan, and I'm glad that you took a few moments out of your time to listen to this podcast or watch this video. I hope that you are having an amazing, beautiful, perfect day. I trust that you are. And give me any questions or comments below, and I will be talking to you soon. Yes, God.